So guys, I'm going to start closer, right? Today the topic is closer. So I'm gonna teach you all about closer in JavaScript. What is a closer? Why we use? First theory, then the syntax, then after the example, then after I will tell you related to example explanation why I just took this example and what is the reason behind it. With I just give you syntax explanation and example explanation too at the same time. So what happen for you is when you write your code by your own, right, then you can understand why you're writing those syntax, right? So if you know the syntax, you can create by your own so many example. But if you don't know the syntax, why using the syntax, what is the reason behind that, so always you get the problem. And that's the thing in all the coding, right? When you're writing the syntax, you should know about that definition of that syntax and how and that syntax it work. So that is the most important thing, is that first you need to know how that syntax is working and what is the reason behind that, and go deep in little bit. So when you're writing by your own code in somewhere, you when you're using closer, so you know about it, right? Why you're writing that. It is not all about copy paste for somewhere, right? So let's start. So total topic is the closer. So welcome to JavaScript, guys. So closer is a fundamental concept in JavaScript that allow a function to retain access to a variable from its outer enclosing scope even after the outer function has finished executing. This happens because the inner function maintains a reference to the outer function variable, creating a closure over those variables. Sentence of closures. A closure is created when a function is defined within another function and the inner function refer to variables from the outer function scope. Let's function syntax. Function outer function, let outer variable equal to I am from outer function inner function console.log outer variables. Return inner functions. Constant closure function equal to outer function. What is the meaning of that? Outer function has executed and close function now hold a reference to an inner function, right? Now come to the downside. The closer function can still access the outer variable even of outer function has finished executing. Come downside. So you know what? When I wrote a syntax, then I also am telling to you what is the meaning of that, why we use, right? So it will very easy for you to understand the syntax part. Now in deep, I will also explain you. So the closure function can still access the outer variable event of outer function has finished executing. Closure function, output, right? I am from outer function. So come to the downside explanation part. So outer function is defined and it contains a local variable called outer variable. Function inner function. Inside outer function, inner function is defined. It references outer variable from its outer scope. Return inner functions, outer functions, return inner function. Now closure function hold a reference to inner functions. Const closure function is equal to outer function. Outer function is invoked and its return value inner function is assigned to closure function. Closure function, when the closure function is invoked, it still has access to very outer variable from its closure even term outer function has completed execution. So use case of closure, that is a very important thing, right? So closure allow for the creation of private variables. The variables inside the outer function are now directly accessible from outside, but they can access by the inner function. Function create counter, let's count is equal to 0, return function count plus plus console.log count. So const counter is equal to create counter output 1 output 2. Explanation of code. Closure, the inner function closure has access to the count variable even after the create counter function has finished executing. This is possible because the inner function form a closure over the count variable. Return function inner function, inside create counter and inner function is defined count plus plus console.log count. This inner function increment the count variable and then log its value to the console, creating a counter instance. Const counter is equal to create counter. This line invokes create counter and the return value is assigned to the variable counter. The return value is the inner function, the closure. At this point, the count variable is effectively captured within the closure. Using the counter1 and counter output 1 output 2. When you call counter, it executes the inner function in the closure which has access to the count variable. The first time it called count is equal to 0, so it is the increment it to 1 and log 1. The second time it's called count is 1, so it is increment it to 2 and log 2. The closure allows the inner function to remember the environment in which it was created, including the count variable. This is powerful feature in JavaScript, guys, often used to create private variable or encapsulate functionality. Callback function. Callback function is like closure are often used in a callback function where a function is passed and as an argument to another function and retain access to variable from its lexical scope. Function fetch data URL, comma callback fetch URL dot then response dot JSON then data callback data dot catch error console dot error fetch error fetch data, then all the things linkage is provided, then console dot log data. Explanation of code, like the initiates a fetch request to the specified URL using the fetch API. The fetch function retain a promise that resolve to the response to that request dot then response.json. Then the then method is used to handle a promise when it is resolved. Here is take the response object and call its JSON method. This method return a promise that resolved to the result of parsing to the body text as JSON. Dot then data callback data. Another then block is used to handle the promise from the previous step. It take the parsed JSON data and call the callback function with this data. Dot catch error console dot error fetch error. The catch block is used to handle any error that may occur during the fetch operation. If there is an error, it log an error message to the console. Using fetch data to make request, fetch data console dot log data comma data. This line evokes the fetch data function with the specific URL and a callback function. The callback function simply log the fetch data to the console. In summary, the fetch data function encapsulates the process of making fetch request, handling the response by parsing it as JSON, and then invoking a callback function with the parsed data. This is a common pattern when dealing with the asynchronous operation in JavaScript, providing a modular way to handle the result of asynchronous operations. Event handler. Closures are commonly used in event handler to maintain access to variable related to the event. Function create button. Let count is equal to 0. Const button is equal to document.create element button. Button.text content is equal to click me. Button.add event listener. Click comma function. Count plus plus. Console.log button click comma count. Document.body.append child button. Create button. Right, create button function create button, let count equal to 0, const button equal to document dot create button dot text content equal to click me. Button dot add event listener click function count plus plus console dot log button click count. Document dot body dot append child button. This function create a button element button and set it text content to click me. It also initialize a count variable to 0. The function then add a click event listener to the button when the button is clicked. The event listener increment the count variable and log a message to the console indicating that the button has been clicked along with the current count. Invoking create button twice. Create button. This code calls the create button function twice. As a result, two buttons are created and append to the body of the document. Each button has its own count variable and clicking each button will independently increment its associated count. The purpose of duplicating the create button function call might be for demonstrating that the multiple buttons with the independent counters can be created on the same